What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Shawn Myszka, Movement Master and OptimizeMovement.com, coming to you with another movement lesson. And on today's video, we're going to be doing something just a little different. I wanted to create and post this video to kind of pass around the industry in an attempt to summarize some of the key points that I tried to make during my presentations over this past weekend's NSCA Coaches Conference. I actually make this video a two-parter. One to address key points and the other to address questions that came up as a result of the presentation and the material within it. Now, I thought that this way of offering the video may help to not only serve as reminders for those of you who were in attendance, but also shed some light on the presentations for those of you who couldn't make it. To start, the presentation was called Perfect Practice, putting motor learning theory into practical application. And my objectives for the presentation were really quite simple and pretty straightforward, but were really more daunting in reality. For starters, I wanted to distinguish between the differences that exist among the various motor control and motor learning theories that are out there. Secondly, I wanted participants to realize the importance of their role as coaches, as movement pedagogists, if you will, as movement skill acquisition teachers, in designing a movement practice structure and how that structure will go or serve to impact motor performance as well as long-term movement skill acquisition. Now, I was fortunate enough to be selected as one of the presenters who was offered 2 speaking slots, one for a lecture and then one for a hands-on session. Thus, to help me achieve my objectives, I essentially highlighted various theories such as the generalized motor program and schema theory, Fitz and Posner's stages of motor learning, and then contrasted that to fill in some of the blanks with the dynamical systems theory and the constraints-led approach. I also tried to adequately define certain key concepts of movement skill acquisition, such as the biodynamic structure of movement, information and movement coupling, and the perceptual motor landscape, while also trying to help individuals approach the understanding of movement at a more multi-level of analysis regarding the 3 B's of movement skill at a brain, behavioral, and then biomechanical level. Finally, I offered some key starting points to serve as guidelines as it revolves around coaching communication and guidance methods such as instructions and feedback and cueing. And of course, as you can probably already tell, many of the concepts, ideas, and thoughts which we discussed at the presentations were of the same nature and of the same tone that we often do here at Movement Mastery. Now, once we got into the hands-on, I wanted to show the participants a practical example of using a constraints-led approach to help athletes achieve their motor performance and motor learning goals, namely in regards to the development of agility movement skill. Now, we could have used any movement skill as our foundation or as our key to work with our key constraints. But essentially, I picked agility movement skill, knowing that at the coaches conference, you get a wide variety of coaches who train a diversity of movement skills. Thus, I ended up picking 2 volunteers from the crowd, and we essentially went at it step by step with activities which were designed towards helping those individuals master their bodies in time and space in relation to moving stimuli and behaving accordingly to overcome that respective problem in sport. And of course, I gradually ramped up the intensity and complexity of the drill activity, essentially changing the landscape as well as the workspace of the drill, as well as the nature of the task to get those individual athletes more attuned to matching their movement solutions to the problems that were arising in the environment. And at the same time, I essentially attempted to modify my communication and my feedback that I gave to each one of those athletes based on the behaviors that they were showing, and what they were also saying to me in response to some of my guided discovery type questions. Now, beyond that, in today's video, I want to expand on a few key points of the presentations, a few of the take-homes, if you will. Now, number one, though I mentioned at the beginning of both presentations to discuss a topic with as much depth and breadth as movement skill acquisition has, there is really no way that I could have possibly gone as deep as needed or that the topic itself deserves in an hour. I could only offer or give a 30,000-foot view of it. Thus, I only hope that I could give you, the participants, the added hunger and the starting points to be able to dive into the topic much further while also raising some points which will prompt you or hopefully prompt you to go back and evaluate your own movement practice habits within your athletes. Number two is the definition of perfect practice, in my opinion, must be looked at and matched to the specific context of its use. Namely, the type of task you're trying to develop mastery within, as well as the level of athlete that you're working with, where you might be in the time scale of that athlete's development, as well as the goal of the respective movement session, meaning the differences between practice methods which are used for motor performance increase and those practice methods that are used to enhance motor learning. Number three, we must move, in my opinion, beyond a biomechanics only type approach and mentality, not only when investigating movement skill, but also within the methods employed when trying to develop further movement skill. Meaning, we must think about the 3 B's of movement skill: the brain, the behaviors, and the biomechanics, and then look at the interdependent interactions between each of those, as well as the different things we do in practice which could serve to impact each of those levels and to what extent, as well as the relationships among these levels when changes occur at each respective level. Number 4, we must come to the realization that rote rehearsal of many of our traditionally prescribed movement drills is likely not going to be enough to develop movement skill which will hold up and be robust under the realities of sport. Namely, when movement has to occur under increased chaos, pressure, anxiety, fatigue, and attention demands. Instead, we must think about the design of movement activities rather than more prescription of drills. As if we design activities which are more representative of situational, experiential type learning specific to sport movement problems, then the athlete's biodynamic structure in the perceptual motor landscape can begin to become shaped to these experiences and become attuned to the affordances for action that those respective problems and experiences will offer. And this then makes it that much more likely in my mind that the athlete will truly develop a functional movement skill which is stable yet flexible and can be constructed and organized when the time comes to solve that problem in sport. And number 5, to take that all another step further, I continue to reiterate Nikolai Bernstein's idea of repetition without repetition, as I wanted this to be a theme of both presentations that people took away. Repetition without repetition essentially means that the practice structure and the methods employed will require athletes to continually solve problems in their sport. Basically putting all 3 B's to use in an attempt to continually refine both the cognitive and perceptual strategies as well as the motor solutions that they used when faced with problems with sport from rep to rep. And some of this then, in my take, can be developed through changing of the workspace or of the explicit instructions of the task, or the feedback method being utilized, or the amount of contextual interference within the drill, and really much, much more than that. Now, in part 2 of our video here, I will address some of the reoccurring questions that seem to arise after the presentations, so be sure to be on the lookout for that, as I might answer your specific and respective question that you may have had as a participant as you sat through either one of the presentations. All in all, I do want to make the mention that I'm very grateful to have organizations such as the National Strength and Conditioning Association, who allow me to deeply interact with so many hungry and committed professionals at all levels of sport performance. You know, we all have similar goals, and that's to impact each and every athlete that we encounter. And because of this, these types of events really inspire me so much more to continue to ask better questions, to come up with more accurate and more thorough answers, and to package my thoughts in ways that can impact professionals in an attempt to evolve everyone's understanding of the development of movement mastery for sport. So for another movement lesson, this has been Shawn, Myszka, Movement Mastery and OptimizeMovement.com. I'll talk to you guys on the flip side, and until then, let's continue to master the art of optimizing movement.